NRL Fantasy Buy, Hold, Sell is back for round 9. And I've got a special guest this week. Obviously, Biz is still out with his wedding. He's in Thailand living it up. But we've got the legend here, the KFC King, Jay-Z from the Fantasy Echo Chamber. How you doing, man?
Pretty good, mate. It's been a bit of a long road to recovery after that Cleary captaincy for 5 points, however many rounds ago, but snuck into the top 100 last round. So hopefully going to back up my fourth place overall finish with a win this year is what I'm aiming for.
Hey, you got to get that win. You're right up there. You're absolutely killing it. You're definitely ahead of me. I'm sitting sort of just outside that top 1,000. And I was looking a lot better until Terrell May just kept ticking up points and all his captainers just kept sliding up those rankings.
Yeah, I was like you. I captained Haas, and after Friday, was it Friday, Thursday? Feeling
Yep.
pretty chuffed about it, thinking 97 points.
Yeah.
Terrell May only scored 80 with a try last week. What's he going to do? And then 104 points in 84 minutes. He's just unreal, isn't he? What a player.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. I mean, the 80 minutes, that's the crazy bit. Like he took a 5-minute rest, but last week 80 minutes and then this week 85 minutes with the extra time. So if he's going to keep doing that, then he's a must captain. The thing I would have said about Haas is maybe a bit more attacking upside for Haas, but May's playing 80 minutes and Haas can potentially play 50 in a given week, then it just becomes a bit of a no-brainer. Now let's tear into this. We got our buys, we got our pods next. We go into cheapies, holds, and sells. And I guess a lot of you guys are probably going to be watching for the holds because we got a lot of chat about Kalen Ponga this week and probably a bit of delusion coming through on that one as well. For the buys here, Drinkwater, Sharp, Lucas, Aaron Clark, and Jarom Hughes to talk about. Scotty Drinkwater's up first. Jay-Z, I'll throw to you. He tore up in that game, absolutely feasted on a Titan side that, in your words before the show, didn't look like they wanted to be there. What are your thoughts on Drinkwater? And do you think now is the time, or would you wait for round 13?
It kind of depends on what your team needs. So I bought Drinkwater last week. My logic
Very
behind
cool.
Drinky is that he's a high 40s average, basically year on year without fail, and this year he's got the goal kicking. So feasibly, he's going to average sort of 54 to 55. And look, played the Titans last week, as you said. They just didn't want to be there. Conceded 50 points after going up 3 tries early. So he looks really sharp. He's one of the best attacking fullbacks in the league. And the Cowboys are starting to find form. So
Yeah.
if you're not struggling for round 12 wing fullbacks and you can manage around that, then I think Drinky's one of the best options in the game.
Yeah, man, he's a beast. I absolutely agree. He was on our buy list last week, but I personally went for this next guy instead. Fletcher Sharp at about the same price now. Trinky was a bit cheaper last week. He's bumped up about 37K this week. But with Sharp here, 69K, stayed at the same price. Scored that 50 last week, and it was a 50 with basically no attacking stats. So as a Sharp owner, I sort of saw that and thought, oh man, Newcastle suck. But Fletcher Sharp, the man can rack up fantasy points. And in a game where they showed basically nothing, he just rocked out and made a bunch of tackles, made his meters, had a sort of a mixed plate of stats there, and the attacking stats will come. So I'm not super worried. But for me, the round 12 play was the differentiator between the two of them. Drinky's just as hot, but Fletcher plays round 12, so that's where I went in that one.
Yeah, I've got both. I traded in Fletcher
Cool.
as soon as I heard Jaden Campbell went down 2 weeks before. I traded in Sharp straight away. So two good scores from him for me, and he just has a weirdly good base for a 5'8". Like he's making 26 tackles almost every game. He always looks to run, like he gets in there and takes scoots from dummy half. And if my Knights ever figure out how to attack, he's going to post some really big scores.
Man, I reckon they'll turn up this week. Like South Sydney, a lot of new combinations. Newcastle have just been embarrassing. They get a bunch of guys back too. I'm picking them to score 30 plus points this week and get a win against the Rabbitohs.
Mate, a man after my own heart. I love hearing that from you, Lungy.
Well, they were just so good. Like to start the year, I mean, they weren't amazing, but they were so explosive and exciting to watch at the start. And it felt a bit clunky, but it felt like it was building. And it's just become totally feeble. But Fletcher Sharp, the base is there. The Origin schedule's good. He's not going to make Origin. Only concern with him is if they do change their strategy and they go, you know what, he's getting too much ball, or we want to move him to wing, or something crazy like that, which it's not out of the realm of possibility with the coaching of the Knights, but I think it's pretty unlikely. Now, Dylan Lucas up next, 705K, a bit more expensive than these other guys. Pumped out a 49 last week, That's 49 points with no tackle breaks, no offloads, no attacking stats. So it's about as impressive a 49 as you can have. Are you eyeing off Lucas this week, Jay-Z, or do you think you have too many Knights players at this point?
He's in my considerations, so he's definitely, for me, he's a little stronger than Bo Firma is, just due to how good his buy schedule is.
Yeah.
So I only have 2 Knights at the moment, so it's not like critical for me to avoid Newcastle. But my plan is to trade out Greg Marzu in a couple, well, not in a couple weeks, as our buy schedule stops being favourable. So I think it's from now until about round 18 that there's a free runway for all Newcastle players. So Dylan Lucas is going to be, if not the best, one of the top 5 centers in the game, with a really, really favourable buy schedule. So I mean, it's not a no-brainer, but a really, really strong option for anyone.
Yep, I'm with you there. I was saying on live before too, Lucas over Firma is a bit of a no-brainer. I would say Bo Firma, with that performance he had, has sort of played himself into pretty serious Origin contention. When you look at the Queensland back row, it's Jaden Sewer's been there before. I think Bo Firma's the second guy up. Jeremiah Nanai's in the picture. Dave Fafita's been dropped this week, so he's not really in the conversation. You got guys like Kurt Capewell. I know Brendan Piakura was on the extended bench last year. Like, there's really not a threat there. So, from my view, Firma makes Origin 100%, and he's probably going to be playing big minutes in Origin too. So, Lucas over Firma is a bit of a no-brainer in my mind. I think they're roughly equivalent scorers, if not, and it's hard to say after Bo scored a 109, but if not, Dylan Lucas a bit ahead on the scoring front for the rest of the year, from my view.
Yeah, well, that's just because Bo Firma's a cheat. See how forward that pass was for his try?
Mate, he doesn't have a
Maybe
free the game. he's allowed to run on.
disclaimer, it's a bit of FOMO because I had him locked into my team until Fafita made a miraculous recovery. So that cost me a fair few points.
Mate, brutal. Now, Aaron Clark, 639K. I'm going to talk about this one a bit here because he's come into the last few weeks and he was on our pod list for a couple of weeks. He was at the top of our buy list last week. He was down at a bit of a cheap price, and this has risen 50K plus, jumped to 639K. Priced at a 43 last week. That's jumped to a 48 this week. Now, there's been a few good and bad signs for Clark. Obviously, last week's game, massive green flag. Played great in real life, so he's definitely earned those minutes. 64 minutes is great to see on the back of 60 minutes the week before. 81 points, you love to see it as well. So those minutes are going in the right direction. But I guess before that, when they were back at full strength, those minutes were sort of floating more between sort of that 40 to 55 minutes area. So with Aaron Clark, as the team is today, with Tamari Martin sitting on the bench, he's going to kill it this week. I can say that with a bit of confidence there. But there's just a lot of chat going around that James Fisher-Harris might be back soon. You're paying for that 48 average, so you really want him to be in that sort of mid-50s area to be worth the trade as well. There's just enough questions there that this isn't a complete no-brainer like it was more last week. So I'm kind of a bit on the fence here. I think if it suits your team and you need middle forwards and all that, then jump on Aaron Clark. He'll do a job. He's playing great footy in real life, but it's not a must-have. Like, don't tear your team apart to go get him. You don't have to, destroy yourself to get him. He's not like Hugo Saval last week, who felt like one that you had to get onto. He's one who, if it suits your team, do it. If it doesn't, don't feel too bad about missing out. Do you agree with that, or are you thinking he's a bit of a higher tier than that?
He's not a must-have, but I kind of think that even when Fisher-Harris comes back, he's almost played himself into bigger minutes. Like,
Yep.
I was very against Aaron Clark early season, and up until even last week, really, I was like, this guy's just not going to get the minutes. Every season a bit like Alex Seyfarth. There's a point in every season where people go, Seyfarth's a buy, Aaron Clark's a buy. And it felt like that was going to be another one of those seasons. And then, honestly, he's playing really, really good footy at lock. I guess the worry with him, more so than the minutes dropping in my mind, is if anything happens to Wade Egan, because he's the next drop hooker. So, well, it might even be Tamari Martin or Chanel Harris-Tavita coming off the bench, but that would be the concern for me. He's strongly in my considerations because I don't have a hooker. I don't have any middles for round 12 apart from maybe Corey Horsburgh at the moment. So a really strong option, but like you said, by no means a must. Like, if you have a Riley Smith or enough middles to cover round 12 comfortably, then he's a pretty good option. And if he can continue what he's been doing, which is high tackle counts, couple of tackle busts, not afraid to offload, and is active on the ball, then it's hard to go wrong with a guy like Aaron Clark.
Yeah, because he's been so rock solid, so consistent. Like those meters aren't going below 130 basically any week. I will say too, I think we had a podcast episode last year where you jumped on and we had the Aaron Clark debate. and, we were having a laugh. When he plays 50 plus minutes, he averages 55 points, all that sort of jazz. So he's always had the fantasy pedigree. But yeah, this is looking like a time where it actually pays off to get on. I will say too, 639K. If you're talking about him as a 50 average, even, a low 50s average at hooker, bit of a garbage position. If you had Aaron Clark and Peter Mamazels as your hookers, you're actually doing pretty well at this stage. So I'm for him, but yeah, just don't tear your team apart. Then Jerome Hughes is the last one here, 560K. Now, Hughes, we've seen the pedigree, right? He absolutely killed it last year. Dally M Player of the Year. Couple of stat difference between last year and this year. I do want to highlight, though, because you're sort of watching these guys and you back the return to the norm at some point, but you like to see indicators that's happening before you do jump on. So with Jerome Hughes, last year it was about 125 meters a game run. This year it's about 75 meters a game run, only counting full games. Last year it was 4.3 tackle breaks a game. This year that number is 0.3 tackle breaks. Now, I'm not even going to go into the attacking stats or any of that sort of jazz. I'm more just trying to highlight here that running game hasn't been there at all this year. And that was a big part of what made him dominant last year. And we're seeing him getting up from tackles a lot, wincing, holding the shoulder. That injury is definitely holding him back still. So from my side, I'm watching Jerome Hughes very closely. But I kind of want to see that game where he runs 100 meters or he makes a run and he looks to break tackles and just sort of looks like that old Jerome Hughes. So that's kind of what I'm waiting for there. But at the same time, with guys like this, if you do get on early and you get on the week before that bounce back, you're sometimes rewarded immensely. So look at a guy like Tom Dearden, for example, or Jeremiah Nanai, or one of these guys who are dropping off. Ethan Strange did the same thing, but Jerome Hughes is those guys, but with peak fantasy pedigree, no origin to deal with, and a good storm side. So he's going to be in my team in the next couple of weeks. It's just a matter of when. I'll throw to you, Jay-Z. Are you agreeing with that, or do you have any concerns about Hughes?
I do have my concerns. So when we're talking about players like bouncing back to the norm, last year was almost an outlier year for Hughes. Like he's almost always a sort of mid to high 40s guy, maybe low 50s a couple of years. Last year, Munster missed most of the season, played through with a groin injury when he did play. So he was the chief playmaker in the team, the alpha. And so Melbourne were a lot more reliant on Jerome Hughes, whereas this year the left edge is a lot stronger than it was because Munster's at full fitness. And while his fantasy scores aren't particularly reflecting that, he's actually playing really, really well on the field. Bulk try assists. And to note about Hughes, like you said, he gets up wincing. It doesn't look like he's at 100% yet. So you'd probably want to see a breakout game. And given they play Canberra this week, who are a top 4 side, a very tough side, so you can expect him to get whacked a couple times against Canberra. So
Yeah.
I would be. It goes back to a concept that I like to call trade efficiency. So with someone like him, like you said, almost absolutely going to be a buy at some point, but he doesn't play round 12, so I wouldn't even be thinking about it until round 13. I don't know what Melbourne's matchups outside of this week look like, but he's not someone that I would consider until 13. And hopefully he's sort of built a bit more fitness into his game and his shoulder's a bit more stable. And we start to see a bit more of what he did last season because, like, you'll expect Munster to maybe not back up some weeks from Origin. And Melbourne have a couple of other Origin guys where maybe Hughes takes a bigger role throughout that period. And the thing with Kiwi players as well is that they do tend to dominate over Origin. So guys like Joe Tarpanay and Hughes, and even he's not a Kiwi, but Herbie Farnworth as a English player. So that's where I'd look for him.
I will just counter though, like if he comes out and he looks good this week, looks fully fit, doesn't have that wince, has a big game, like a 70-point game that isn't just ridiculous attacking stats. It's that running game back, maybe a few attacking stats, and just looking good. Even that return to 50, like he's at 560K, right? So I'd probably jump on before then. I don't need the halves for round 12. I'd probably think about it next week. But you're right. Obviously, that bounce back is what we need to see. And we haven't seen that indicator yet, and the stats back that up. So we definitely need to see that indicator. But it's just a matter of timing with a guy like him. Jump into the pods next, and we got Selwyn Cobbo here starting it off. And I made this graphic last week, so I left it in. I think it's useful. Cobbo came out last week and had a pretty good game, like very wet weather conditions, played tough footy, kind of got up looking a bit shaken up a couple of times, but he was running hard into the line and he was playing with a bit of physicality, which is something that I haven't seen from a lot of my star playmakers in my fantasy side. So I was watching that just sort of with a bit of FOMO. Now, I wanted to shout out the stats from reserve grade at fullback because when he's played fullback in reserve grade, he's averaged about 200 meters a game. He's pumped out about 53 as an average, and the attacking stats are off chops. Like it's more tries and line breaks than it is try assists, but it was cool to see him grab a try assist last week too. So I look at these reserve grade stats and I think, yeah, look at that. 189 meters a game, 7.7 tackle breaks a game on a dry day. You know, if he's running that hard and he's looking for sort of opportunities to attack like that, he's going to pop off in a few of these games. Now, it is a bit of a rental, right? So 433K is the appeal. Cobbo's talent is the appeal. The downside is he doesn't play round 12. He's potentially getting selected for Origin, probably quite likely getting selected for Origin. And it's only a 3-week rental now with Reece Walsh coming back in sort of 3 to 5 weeks. So it's a small window, but it's a nuclear pod at 433K where you could potentially get, you know, one of those Tolu Kola type injections of points. And as for Kola, we've seen it worked once. It hasn't worked a lot of times. Cobbo's a bit the same. So it could be one that really shoots you up the rankings or it could be a waste of trades, but definitely worth highlighting.
Yeah, he's interesting. Not one for me, but at his price, he's no guarantee to make Origin. Like I'm not sure that he starts in Queensland's backline, assuming they're fully fit. But I mean, 43 in the torrential rain against the Bulldogs, and he looks really good. So I mean, I've seen crazier things.
Yeah, if I had a lot of sells, I'd jump on for sure. He's one of those guys that I really like. Then Fanua Blake up next. I know you're not a big Fanua Blake fan, so give me the counter to Fanua Blake, and then I'll come in with some upside.
I just don't think he's getting the minutes at Cronulla, and he's been
Mm.
bailed out a couple times. Like obviously he's always going to score tries, but extra 9 minutes in Golden Point was it last week?
Yep.
He's typically only playing between even 40 and 55 minutes, whereas at the Warriors last year, where he was scoring outrageously strong throughout the whole season, he was getting like 60, 70 minutes most games. Whereas it's not quite there this year, and there is a little bit of an injury cloud hovering over his head. Like it's not like he is at full fitness at the moment, at least visibly from watching him play. He doesn't seem like he's 100% there. He's got a couple of big games from try in round one, a lot of minutes against the Bulldogs where they had like half of their side get injured, and then obviously 62 minutes against the Tigers where he was in for another sort of low 50-minute game. I'm not against the idea of buying AFB completely, but I would wait till round 12 because for me, the mids in the game right now are so strong. Like most teams will have May, Haas, Horsburgh, maybe even Aaron Clark and Isaiah Yeo. So there's no rush to get a guy like this in. Come round 12, he's going to be pretty popular, I imagine.
Here's my one counter because I agree he's expensive. And I sort of watched him, and my plan this year was that he was going to get cheaper than this. But I kind of thought he'd get down to 660 area. But you're right, he has sort of bailed out a bit. The counter is the fixtures. So Parramatta this week, who have conceded the softest tries to props. I'm near certain that he scores a try this week and pops off, right? And you got the Seagulls next week who have been fragile through the middle as well. So you got those matchups. He's got the Roosters in round 12 in that first major bye round who they're going to be missing some guys too through the middle. They're going to have Zach Docker-Clay playing 80 minutes at hooker. They're going to be missing, some of their forwards like Gus Crichton and those guys as well. So I just reckon he could go on a run, right? And look, I'm not buying Fanua Blake, but I reckon this is one of those ones where we could see him score 2 tries in 3 weeks kind of deal. And, we'd be talking about it later and being like, oh, how is Fanua Blake 770K? Oh, well, that was how, right? And then at that point, he's a bit too expensive to jump on anyway. So I just think he's one of those guys where he's a bit of a speculator. It's a bet on attacking stats, which is not always the best thing to do. Like you don't want to be doing that too much, but Fanua Blake is one I've got a bit of a feeling about. So I'm going to advocate for him, but don't tear your team apart to get him. It's more if you've got a bunch of spare cash in the bank and you're looking for a middle for round 12. He's one of the really interesting ones there. Now, Jeremiah Nanai's up next. JZ, do you think Nanai plays Origin this year?
Yeah, almost certainly. I think he's been one of Slater's favorites since he came into the Origin setup. I'm not going to lie, I was sort of watching Nanai a bit. If he started maybe 2 weeks earlier, then he would have been a strong consideration for my team. But unfortunately, the timing just doesn't work out. He's probably going to play Origin. Cows don't play round 12 generally anyway, and he's not that good of a scorer. Like he can be on his day, but he relies on tries. And with that 70 odd he scored on the weekend, it's kind of just ruined his price range as well.
Yeah. Yeah, the Cowboys were like that in general. So Dearden was another one who went through that sort of curve. Cotter went through that too. Then Taulungi was one that I was sort of eyeing off, and then he had a run of tries that kind of ruined it. But yeah, there was a few guys in that Cowboys team who sort of got within 50K of being cheap enough. But yeah, Nanai, you got on last week, then congratulations to you. You crushed it. But I think at this point it's too late. Xavier Wilson's another one here. And look, 487K, it's not super, super cheap. Xavier Wilson's one who, if the Broncos had a better Origin schedule, I'd be all over this. I like the upside here. Played 80 minutes versus the Dogs last week. Absolutely killed it. Scored that try to open up the game. He's looked pretty good there. I'd probably pencil him in for, he's playing big minutes in the edge back row spot, probably a 45 average. So I wouldn't expect him to go crazy, but he's got a few attacking stats in him and a decent enough attacking work rate there. The downside here is they don't play round 12. They don't play round 18, just round 15. So you don't really get a huge benefit from being a Xavier Wilson owner because you're not getting those weeks where Carrigan and Haas are out and he has to play 60 minutes at prop. So that's kind of the downside there. I guess if he was the locked-in back rower, that would be a great thing. But then we know that Jordan Ricky's an 80-minute back rower, and they've got Jaden Hunt and Pierre Kura sitting on the bench, and they're not going to give Pierre Kura 0 minutes. So I think Wilson then drops back to, at worst, like a 50-minute guy, at best, maybe 70 minutes. So it just becomes a bit of a bit too risky for me without the upside for the buy period as well. So I'm going to say no on this one, but there is a world where he just dominates on the edge and he becomes an edge back rower. And we just see Xavier Wilson rocket up to 650K. And we think, oh my God, how did we miss that?
Yeah, he's a guy with a lot of attacking upside. He almost reminds me of like a early career Nelson Asafa Solomona, where he's just this big unit who spends some time on the edge. I don't think 80 minutes is going to be a week-to-week thing for him. Whether he's capable or not is a different question. But like you said, there's Pecora and Hunt on the interchange bench. He did look very good against the Bulldogs in that position, though. Like he's clearly a massive talent, and Madge has identified that he needs to get more minutes and more time on the field and give him attacking situations. So you're kind of hoping for like a gluttony of attacking stats over the next couple of weeks, which is hard to rely on for guys that aren't Adam Fanoa-Blake because he seems to score a try every second week. But I had a brief look at him today, but he just doesn't fit my plans, and I don't think he'll be strong enough of a scorer to make 100K in the time he's got.
If he played 12 and 15, let's say he had the Newcastle buy schedule, he was at 18, right? That would be a different story because you'd get that benefit around Origin and all of that. So you're guaranteed some minutes through those weeks as well and some middle minutes. But yeah, I'm with you there. I think it's a little too uphill, but it could work out. And then we got Isaac Tungo, and we're going to talk about Radley as well here too at your request. But Isaac Tungo is one who I remember we were talking about it a bit last year, and I've just got to remind everyone of the history. So Tungo has had seasons where he's averaged 42 and 49 in back-to-back years. Last year, he fell off a cliff completely. And look, Penrith won the comp last year, but they weren't at their like sort of searing best last year. This year, they're struggling, and he's really struggled. But if you look at that sort of arc for him, he's gone through this year and been pretty bad. Then he got dropped to the bench. Came on at halftime. There was an injury to Luke Garner. Came into the center spot. Ran hard that second half. I think he scored about 25 points and a half of footy. Pretty sure it was mostly base stats there too. So he just looked a bit different to me. And then last week he looked a lot more sort of intent driven. And he's a guy who can break tackles, but for the first time in 18 months, he looked like he wanted to. So Isaac Tungo is a guy who it wouldn't shock, I think, either of us like significantly if we finished the year and he was a 40 plus average because he's done it before. but it's a tough one to bet on because we've seen such a long period of time of him being this, high 20s average guy that really relies on attacking stats, doesn't have much of a base, doesn't play particularly physical footy. So it's a tough one to bet on. You could be signing yourself up for a lot of frustration, but at 401k, if you were looking for a pod, he's a streaky guy who has had runs where he's averaged 70 points across a month. He could do that again. Jay-Z, is this one that's insane to bet on, or are you soft on this one?
I'm not high on him just because we have so many guys that are already kind of doing what he's doing. So,
Yeah.
like Stafford Toa, Tamale, Rob Toya, if you still have those guys, like I wouldn't be trading any of them to Tungo. I'd be holding on to those guys more so. So, to me, he's kind of in that bucket, but based on what he's done this year, slightly worse than those guys.
Yep.
Um, of course, Penrith could bounce back and just start killing everybody, and he scores 2 tries every 2 games and gets back to his tackle busting best like in his debut season. But
Yeah.
I just haven't seen enough of that out of Penrith to be willing to make a bet on someone like Tungo, who's been so poor, particularly just on the field with his individual form's been really bad. And so, maybe he's turned a leaf and he goes back to that beast that we know he can be. But I'm not willing to make that bet.
Yeah. I will shout out too. I think this year's a bit different. So you highlighted a good point there. We've got Toya, we've got Tamale, we've got, Stafford Toa. These guys started out very cheap. This is a season where we've been spoiled with these cheapies and with cash generation. I think if we were in last year where it was a real struggle to generate cash, we'd be looking at Tungo really closely. But because we don't really need it this year, guys like him aren't as interesting to us. So yeah, good shout there. And then Victor Radley, I'll throw him to you because you sent the message across about him. You're going off Radley for round 13, right? Or round 12, sorry.
Yeah, so I didn't start the season with Naf White and I don't have Siwa Wong. So I think this is more relevant for people that don't have a ton of Roosters. So I know there's a
Mm.
lot of teams that have Watson as well. 3 Roosters I
I'm with
don't have.
you.
So
I'm with you. Just
at the moment,
Savale and Toya. So I'm the same as you.
yeah, yeah, at the moment I just have Toya from the Chooks. So Radley fills a really, really important hole in most teams' buy planning, which is that middles are at an absolute premium. And while he has a history of head knocks and he's not the funnest own because you are kind of worried that he's just going to go into a tackle wrong or he has it in him to just have like a 20-point game in 80 minutes. Statistically, over the past however many seasons, 4 or 5 seasons, when he plays big minutes, whether it's middle, whether that's edge, he's a 45 to 50-point scorer. So in that buy period where we're going to have Haas is playing Origin, May almost certainly playing Origin, Horsburgh probably plays Origin as well.
Yep.
What
Yo,
middles are you going
he
to have in the
maintains
buy
too.
rounds? Yep, Yo as well. So Radley fills that gap, and even if you need an edge forward on some weeks, he's got the dual position as well. So just a really handy guy. And given the Roosters' buy schedule is actually really easy to plan around if you don't have too many of them, for me, he's like the perfect sort of mid-range buy option.
Yeah, mate, red hot. You've nailed it there. I'll just add a few details in. He's priced around 500k, priced at the 37-ish, sort of high 30s there. For him too, Spencer Lenu is likely to play Origin. Angus Crichton is basically certain to play Origin. Connor Watson's quite likely to play Origin. So in those major buy rounds, of which he plays all three, he gets a bit of a boost in those weeks too. And we've seen Nat Butcher ruled out for, I think it's 6 to 8 weeks, which is absolutely brutal for him. But I mean, Egan Butcher comes in, but it doesn't really sort of threaten the minutes the way Nat Butcher did. So yeah, he's an interesting one. I've definitely got my eye on him too because I've left the middle forward spot relatively open in my team because there's a lot of guys that I'm watching like him, Max Plath, there's a few other guys there too that I think will get to the right price just before this origin period. So with Radley, I would say buy him on round 12 though. Like if you bought him in round 11 and he got hurt, you'd absolutely kill yourself. Like you'd be kicking yourself. So
Yeah.
yeah, wait till round 12 and then he could be one to jump onto. I'll just shout out to round 10, by the way. Roosters have the bye. I think everyone knows this, but they've got the bye next week. So for the Chookies, if you've got a lot of Chooks this week, let's say you've got 4 Roosters. I've seen teams of 5 or 6 Roosters. You're going to be in trouble next week. So probably don't buy Radley and move on some of those guys. Another pod I want to throw at you. He's not on here. He's on a bye this week. Tommy Turbo is like 550k. Probably not in the Origin team. If he had a good game in round 11, would you think about him round 12?
If he doesn't play Origin, yeah, you'd be silly to not consider it. I find it hard to believe he doesn't make the Blues. So I mean, I don't know. It's
Really?
tough,
What
right?
position is he playing?
If Lomax isn't fit, I think he takes his wing.
Hmm.
But no, it's a fair point. If Lomax is back in time, then there's a good chance he doesn't make the team. Maybe he's 18th man and it ruins his buy planning. But if he's available in round 12, then yeah, you have to consider him. He's like traditionally a 50-point guy, priced in sort of the low 40s, maybe high 30s. So,
He's
I mean,
550. Super
I
cheap.
don't hate it. He's got a big break even as well, right? So,
Mm.
I mean, Manly, if they don't have a lot of Origin players, which I think it's probably just Cherry Evans and maybe Olakau'atu at this point, they might go on a run over the bye period and just absolutely slaughter teams. So,
Yeah.
um,
Luke Brooks
definitely
will
one to look
either way.
at. Oh,
Yeah,
God.
I reckon he's red hot. Like I reckon that could be a pod of pods through the Origin period because he can go nuclear at the right time. He'll want that Origin jersey back too. The concern is he'll play too well, which is good for scores, but he'll get back into the team. Now, Cheapies up next, and this is pretty straightforward. Hugo Savala is the first one. You mentioned you don't have Savala. He's got the bye next week, but you don't have too many Roosters there. Had a cracking game. Sort of brought out a bit of attack to go with his really solid, tackles and kick meters, defensive stats. I'll shout out too that he had identical tackle and missed tackle stats the last 2 weeks, and then this week he upped the tackle count and reduced the missed tackles to 0. So he's improving every day. Is he the first guy you're buying this week, Jay Z?
So, I may have lied. I do have Savala.
Oh, okay.
I completely forgot about
I
him
was
for
gonna
whatever
say,
reason.
I was shocked that you missed that one because you've been high on
Uh,
him for ages.
Yeah, no, he's actually a really strong scorer in New South Wales Cup. So one thing he hasn't really brought to the fore in first grade yet is his running game. And I mean, just
Mm.
look at the bloke; he's like 6'5", so
Yeah,
he can run. So I think at some point he's going to come out and he's going to show us what he can do in that sense. But obviously, his job right now is to just kick to the corners and
mm,
execute the game plan. So hopefully, the more time he spends in the team, the more comfortable he gets in his position, the more he runs.
yep.
Yeah, he even kicked a few goals on the weekend as well. So that's not going to happen while Sandon Smith's still in the team. But he's got a lot of upside, and considering he's scoring 30s while at 270k already, any upside pushes him into like basically must-have territory.
And plays all the buy rounds as well. So yeah, elite option. I'm with you there.
Well,
Um,
yeah, just on that one. So Sam Walker's expected back in round 13, so after the first buy.
mm.
So he only plays the first buy, but it's enough of a runway for him to make money. And
I've heard a lot of talk from Roosters fans, so it's not credible talk at all, but a lot of talk that they want Savala over Sandon at the 7 spot, and they want Sam Walker to play more of that 6 role. So I don't
I
think
mean,
it's completely impossible that would
I don't
happen.
hate it, but I think Sandon is, and he showed us on Anzac Day just how good he is of a
Oh yeah,
player. So I don't think he's
it's
getting
hard. It's
dropped.
hard to suggest that after he scored 2 tries,
Yeah.
killed it. But yeah, look, it's a possibility though. I'll just raise it as a bit of a possibility. But yeah, red hot option, Savala there. Then Lycan King Togia. So he's an interesting one. He's a half with very low kick meters in reserve grade. Has had some reasonably solid, averages there, sort of in that 40s area is where he floats around. Some decent attacking stats, but the stats didn't really jump off the page for me. So I guess the conversation for me is more about what's that partnership with Kyle Flanagan look like? And if he's been named at the 7 spot, which he has, you could maybe assume that he's going to play 7 the way Flanagan wanted Ilias to play 7, which was all the kick meters, steering the team around and sort of running here and there. So if he gets that role, then that's crazy. But the reserve grade stats don't really back that up. So I'm moderating expectations on this. Like, I think he's going to have a good shot in the team. I don't think they're going to bring Ilias back anytime soon because they've sort of been warning about dropping Ilias for a while. But he's 230k, so he feels like a must. Doesn't play round 12 though. I'm just not completely convinced, but I'm keen to throw to you. What are your thoughts on this guy? Are you red hot on him, jumping on right now, or are you waiting a week and seeing what happens?
Yeah. So it's a little awkward with guys like this who come into first grade and they don't really have consistent ways of scoring points. So
Mm.
I don't know much about how good he is defensively, but he's going to be targeted when he comes into first grade. So if he's not a strong tackler, going to have a lot of negatives in that regard. as a runner in a sort of lower of on the table side, is he going to have that many attacking opportunities? Maybe. I like you. I think I'd rather wait a week and see what it looks like with him and Flanagan working together. Obviously, Ilias wasn't working. I believe I said in preseason that he's not a very good player on this channel. So, foreshadowing. But yeah, for me, he's a wait and see. He's got tons of reps on him. He's meant to be like the next big thing for St George. Just re-signed as well for 2 years, so good signs that he's got sort of a bit of job security there. But I'd like to see at least one game. If he can't score well against the Tigers, then I have my doubts.
Yeah, let's see if he passes the eye test. I'm with you there. I just don't have that many cash outs required right now as well. So if he jumps to 250k and he kills it, so be it. I will say too, Flanagan's worth keeping an eye on as well. If King Togia comes in and doesn't really kick the ball, and Flanagan goes back to that 7 role, which he's done before and he's averaged in the 40s before, he might be interesting, probably more around 13 than anything, but could be interesting as well. So yeah, just keep an eye on that halves pairing, could be juicy. And Riley Smith, he's my hooker for round 12. So he's been kind of solid. I mean, I bought him on the belief that the role would evolve and he was the guy, and Para's existing hookers were not rated at all by the fans or the club. And he has evolved into that role. He played 80 minutes in his last game before the bye. So that's been great to see. But the scoring production has been bog average. Like that 80-minute game included, I think it was 36 tackles and 6 missed tackles. Not a lot, if any, running stats and no attacking stats pretty much across the board for him. So I love the role, but the scoring and the production we've seen hasn't been particularly impressive at all. So from my perspective, 352k, you could jump on. There's no bench hooker again this week. They don't seem to view Dylan Walker as a hooker either. They were playing Hopgood at hooker instead of Walker. So that makes me think that Riley Smith will play 80 minutes again. So if you need a hooker for that round, I almost prefer him to, people are talking about Wade Egan, these types of players. I'd probably rather just go Riley Smith and save 350k and use that money elsewhere, because I think he can evolve into a 40s, like a low 40s average.
Yeah, so that's actually kind of exactly what I was thinking. If he's playing 80 minutes every week, the game against the Tigers might have been a bit of a one-off in terms of scoring. Yeah, the tackle count was the same amount of tackles he made against the Dragons when he played 15 less minutes. So might have just been a lower sort of tackle count game. 38 tackles against the Raiders in 62 minutes as well suggests that he does have a work ethic. And then the 6 missed tackles, of course, like he hasn't done that in any other game. He's going to have a few because he's a smaller bloke. He's a bit like Reid Marnie. We haven't seen the attacking game from him yet, but if he plays 80 minutes, I think we should be expecting low 40s. He's clearly not going to average 50 even in 80 minutes because he doesn't run the team by any means. He doesn't have a big running game. Doesn't seem to kick much either. So yeah, I think low 40s is reasonable, and you could almost it'll be a slow burn, but squeeze every last drop of cash he has out of him from now until I think it's round 15. The second major buy is. So he's one I'm considering. If he's named to start come Friday 5 o'clock, whenever the hour before team lists are, good chance I'll trade him in.
Yeah, and him and Marmazelis too, they cover each other for buys as well. So not a bad duo to have. Then a couple more Parramatta players here. We got Tuiviti and Charlie Geimer. So Tuiviti obviously on the bench there as it stands right now. Charlie Geimer is in the edge back row spot. Now, we were chatting before. There's been a bit of word around that Jack Williams might miss some time. He's been named to start, so I don't see that as super credible just yet. But it's worth keeping an eye on. So we'll analyze these guys pre Jack Williams versus, if Jack Williams plays. So if Jack Williams is out, Tuiviti becomes extremely interesting because Jack Williams is a starting prop. Joe Ofahengawi has been released from the club. Tuiviti is the guy they like, and the minutes have been jumping up. It peaked at 33 minutes, so it's not like the minutes have been huge, but he's looked good in real life. He's 258k. Downside is Parramatta's buy schedule is pretty garbage, and you do give yourself a chance at a real dud here. And I mean, I was really keen on like Wiramu Greg in previous years, and I got a bunch out of him. But that was back when Junior Paulo and RCG used to play Origin. Para don't have any Origin playing forwards now, except Hopgood maybe, but probably not. So yeah, for Tuivasa, you're really not going to get a boost through the Origin period. You're looking at him and you're saying, you know what? I think he's going to earn a genuine 40 minutes a week, and that's what you're buying for, right? So I don't know if Jack Williams is out and injured for a while, then Tuivasa becomes a great option. But with Jack Williams in the team, I'm not completely convinced that he's going to absorb a significant amount of minutes. So that's where I sit on him. Are you thinking the same thing, or are you a bit different there, Jay-Z?
Yeah, I was looking for cash outs the other week, and I sort of looked at his numbers and just not getting enough. Obviously, he sort of had the bigger game against Wests, but he scored a try in that.
It was a
And for
dummy
a
half time
guy,
too, by the way. So it wasn't replicatable at all.
yeah, for a guy as big as he is, he doesn't have that many tackle busts this season. So unless we start to see 35 to 40 minutes from him, then I probably am just going to avoid, because when we have 21 man squads, the downside of trading to someone that is just a dead spot in your team is just way too high. In previous seasons where we've had sort of 25 man squads, like I've bought guys like Junior Paulo, who I know are only going to play 1 week, or Joseph Paulo, sorry, for Cronulla,
Yep.
who I knew were only going to play like 1 big minute game, and then they would sit in my auto emergencies for the rest of the season. You can't do that this year as much. So guys like him, I think there's just too much downside. So even if he does go on and kick on, it just nothing suggests that he's going to do that.
Yep. Yeah, I miss those guys though. I loved buying those dead roster spots, especially towards the end of the Origin period. That was when you
Mate,
do it. You get those little cash outs, and sometimes
do you
they
remember when
overperform.
I bought Matt Eisenhuth last year for a 60 pointer?
He killed it, bro. He killed it. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes they pop off. Geimer here, 305k. What do you reckon?
Um, just he's got a couple of weeks, so maybe I don't know that he's that good of a scorer just generally though. Like he seems to miss a fair few tackles and doesn't really break tackles that often either. Like looking at his scores now, he's got 27 points in 67 minutes, albeit against Melbourne,
Check out the
22 and
meters in
30.
that game. It's like
Well,
sub
yeah,
30. But yeah, as a para fan, I like Geimer, but the impressive performances I've seen from him have been as a bench prop. And I'm not saying he needs to be a bench prop, but I just haven't seen anything on the edge that indicates to me that he's going to go out and get his. So I'd need to see him play well enough this week to say that he's the starting back rower. Otherwise, I reckon he's
yeah,
a bit of a trap because he's popped up and then been dropped a few times. And, you know, we're a club with Ryan Madison and Bryce Cartwright sitting in reserve grade right now, and Sean Lane on sabbatical as well. So there's a bunch of guys who could step in who are probably better players than he is. So it's a bit risky when it comes to Geimer. Now, the holds are interesting here. Callum Ponga, this is the biggest and most debated one on the planet. I'm pretty clean on this. I'm going to say it's a firm hold of Callum Ponga. I think the Knights bounce back this week, like I said before. I think this game against South Sydney will be their spring launch. They got their middle forwards back. They can't continue to be as bad as they've been. And Callum Ponga, I'm getting backing him to go 50 plus this week. So, look, if you hold, it's on you. It's not on me. But that's just how I see this happening. I think he bounces back.
I don't know if it's sunken cost fallacy, but it's the guy that pretty much always averages 50 plus, and yeah, Newcastle have been atrocious, and he hasn't been very good himself either. But it's got to change at some point, right? And we've got a few middle forwards back this week. I think Saifidi and Elliott are back, so he'll have a better platform playing South without Latrell as well. And then I think we talked about this pre-show. They have Parramatta next week. No, Titans next week, into Parramatta, into Penrith, who are going to have like 5 Origin players out in round 12. That's if
If
Ponga doesn't
he's,
make the
yeah,
team. He
yeah,
probably will still, but if you have him, I wouldn't be trading him. He's almost entering buy territory for me. Like
yeah,
I'm considering doing it, but yeah,
yeah,
maybe next week. I don't know. Like, how often are you
yeah.
going to get a 540k Kalen Ponga?
I mean, we talked about Cobbo before. It's basically the same case, but with more pedigree, more upside, and at a bit of a higher price, and with better fixtures too. So, yeah. No, when we were talking about that before, I sort of got tempted as well to jump on because it would be fun, and those fixtures are good. Like, there's no way the Titans and the Eels lock him up, right?
Yeah,
He's had
well,
2 or less tackle breaks every week since round 2. So that's like he's not really trying. Like, he's not really trying to break those tackles.
imagine you trade him in and he goes 80, 90 right before Origin. We have 8 players that are sitting out during the bye rounds anyway, so it's
Yeah.
it's tempting for me.
See, now you've got me thinking that narrative would be fun. That would be fun. Guys, let us know if you're trading Ponga in this week, because don't sell him though is the answer, right? So for everyone, more people have him than considering buying him. I definitely wouldn't sell him. So you keep him up until he gets picked for Origin, and then you maybe keep him after that as well, because maybe Origin reignites him. Like, you just not, I would not sell Kalen Ponga for under 600k, like, ever. Like, he's just such a good little lottery ticket for you there. Trell Mitchell's the next one. He's around that 700k mark. He's been interesting. So he came in. Kick meters have been fantastic. That's sort of what we're picking him on. I jumped on him. I didn't really recommend him aggressively on this channel, but I jumped on for the upside there, and I like to have a bit of fun with these sorts of guys. And what I've seen with Latrell is, again, it's a bit like Jarom Hughes, but he hasn't had an injury to justify it. He's had his run meters drop from 122 meters last year down to 87 meters this year, and 5 tackle breaks a game last year down to 1.3 tackle breaks a game this year. There's been heaps of opportunities where he's had one-on-one matchups. He's been close to the line. He's had nice lanes to run into, and he's just passing over and over again. So I don't know. It's a weird one. Like, Souths aren't winning games. It's not a strategy that's working, but it feels like he's kind of trying to play that more halfbacky role. And I sort of thought he'd bring a bit more Latrell to the halves, which he hasn't really done. So from my perspective, unless you've got a great trade and you can get something really good for him, I sort of look at Latrell and I think, you know what? Next 2 games after this 1 week suspension, the Broncos and the Tigers, who both can be a bit fragile on the edges defensively. Then you got Origin. You're probably going to have to sell him for the Origin period. There's, like, let's say a 5% chance he doesn't make Origin, maybe less than that, maybe a 2% chance. But if he didn't make Origin, he'd be a must-have through that period as well. So I just sort of look at him and I go, you know what? I haven't gotten much out of him. I kind of want to keep him at this point, but maybe there's a bit of sunk cost fallacy there. I'd be so okay with people selling him. Like, if you can make a good trade for him, get him out and do some good things with that, move him on. I just think there's a chance in that next 2 weeks he does light it up and sort of wakes up and puts that tryout in for Origin.
Yeah, see, I think I would be more inclined to sell because he does miss out this week against what would have been an easier fixture for him. And you've been stitched up a bit. Like, he's played the Bulldogs, who flogged them like they couldn't even score against, and then Melbourne, who he shouldn't even be suspended. Quite frankly, that tackle was a bit of a nothing tackle. And then he comes back to Brisbane, so it's not a particularly enticing or appealing matchup for him. And when there are so many guys like sort of Dill Lucas, Aaron Clark in the same price range as him that are much more buy friendly, like, I'm saying it now, he's a certainty for Origin if he gets picked. Unless he gets suspended or something. But Latrell walks into the blue side at left center. And so I'd be tempted to sell him. Yeah, he might come out and score 80 against the Tigers in round 11. But I just think you'd make more points by trading to, like, a Dill Lucas or an Aaron Clark this week.
Yeah, I guess the counter to that is he's a loophole this week. So I can probably see it early, see what that loophole is, and make that call. So maybe if you have him sitting in that interchange 4 spot, check out your loop. Maybe sit him in the starting team at wing fullback and check out your loopholer at wing fullback. If they score poorly, you can trade him to someone else. If they score well, you keep him and you see what happens. Like, I guess from my side, I'm sort of thinking I'm going to trade very hard in that sort of round 12 chunk, because I've already got 10 players for round 12. So that's kind of where I'm leaning. But if you are behind for round 12, which for me, my backline's full, then you can definitely make him a mover as well. So yeah, a bit of a split decision there. Then Nafahu White, Matt Burton, Tom Jenkins up next. For White, I think this is pretty straightforward. He's had a couple of average games here and there, but when he plays 50 minutes, he's not going to score 37 like he did last week normally. It's going to be more like last year. It was a 44 average in 50 minutes. I think this year he's played better footy, so I would speculate that he's more of a high 40s average in that 50-minute role. You've got games in round 12, 15, and 18 where he's going to be playing prop, and Spencer Lanu's going to be out. They're going to be missing, a bunch of other Origin players as well. So he's going to play that bigger minute role, maybe 55 to 60. And when the Roosters have their inevitable injuries as well, he just bumps up as well. So I think Nafahu White's just too valuable through this Origin period at that middle forward spot. I think you're going to say the same thing as me too, JC. So he's one that you got to hold on to if you have him. Just enjoy riding that wave. And if you don't, I wouldn't buy him, but I would definitely hold on. If you agree with that, I'll throw straight to Matt Burton here for you. 595K. If you had Burton, you'd hold him, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know why you would have rushed him into your team, but
Yeah.
certainly a hold if he gets the goal kicking back, which he will at least over Origin when Crichton is playing for the Blues. But when he gets the goal kicking back, he's pretty much a historically strong scorer. He'll average sort of 50 to even maybe 60 if the Dogs can keep up this winning streak. So I wouldn't be too worried about holding a guy like Birdo. I will say Toby Sexton's playing like more of a genuine 7 since he's been out.
Yeah.
Higher kick meters, maybe touching the ball a bit more often. So it still isn't enough of a concern for me to jump off someone like Burton with how good the Dogs' buy schedule is and just how strong of a player he is generally.
Yep. He's a scorching hot round 12 option as well. As long as he's not like 18th man or on the bench for the Blues or something like that, he'll be down to, I don't know, let's call it like 540K, 530K. Crazy cheap for him. But like you said, Sexton is taking up a lot of those stats that he normally ran off. But the week before that shocker last week, he had 200 meters run. So if he's going to play like that, then he's going to be sort of Dylan Brown plus goal kicking, like prime Dylan Brown, hopefully. And he could pump out that 60 average. So yeah, Burton's definitely got some potential. Tommy Jenkins, 380K. We've debated this one. I think it's a funny little debate. I obviously rate Jenkins a bit higher than you do. But I sort of have held on to him. I thought he was going to hold that spot over Casey McLean. We've seen this week McLean's been dropped outright. He's on the extended bench there, and Luke Garner is in the center spot, which is what they named him round 1 when they won in Vegas, and they've named it again here. My view on this is that Jenkins probably keeps a center spot when Brian To'o comes back in, and he plays round 12 as well. So at 380K, a guy who plays round 12, I know Penrith aren't great right now, but I just think he has a bit of upside. And he's had those games where he pumped out 150 meters plus running, 3 offloads, like all that jazz. He has some attacking stats in him at the right time as well. Like we'd be having a really different conversation about him if Casey McLean could do a 2-on-1 draw and pass, because he'd be in a completely different stratosphere of consideration. So my view is he's a pretty clean hold. I think you just stick with him, 380K. Like you're not getting that much out of selling him anyway. So I'd stick with him. But if your team was one where maybe you covered at wing fullback for round 12 already, and you wouldn't be starting him and selling him for, I don't know, you didn't have Savala, for example, freed up that 100K and then you could upgrade, someone else to someone you wanted, then I wouldn't be totally against it. But I personally just think for most teams, you're looking for problems that don't exist, and Jenkins is one of those.
Yeah, I don't agree. I think he sucks. He just he scored what 3 straight 20s now. Yes, he probably had a few try scoring opportunities that didn't where the ball didn't get
Heaps,
past to
mate.
him.
Heaps.
But Blaise
Loads.
Talangi is still his 5'8", and he was just as big of a culprit as Casey McLean was. And Luke Garner's inside him, who's a back rower who isn't really known for having clean hands. So holding on to guys like Jenkins just so that they are a number in your round 12 team is almost the completely wrong way of thinking about the buy rounds for me. You said you're going to trade really strongly around round 12. I am too. My buy rounds, I'm going to absolutely smash with trades because just getting 13 players on the park isn't the objective. It's getting 13 really strong scorers on the park. While you can have some guys that aren't as strong, so like your Hugo Savala, but he's got a much higher base than a Tom Jenkins and has, I guess, more likelihood to go big. Whereas Jenkins is really, really reliant on tries, and he hasn't scored tries for the past 3 weeks, and he's scored 20s because of it. Maybe he scores a try against the Cowboys and has a 50, and he's priced at 450K, and it's a completely different conversation. But when we have guys like King Togia and Savala and Riley Smith, I think they're all way better options. And I mean, I guess if you're really struggling for wing fullbacks and he's just a depth guy for you, then that's fine. But I think the main targets for everyone at the moment are wing fullbacks. So, like for me, I traded Jenkins to Drinkwater last week, and now I never have to worry about him ever again. So, I'd sell him. I don't see the point of holding him to round 12.
Yeah, okay. See, I would counter there. He's averaged over 30 with 0 tries this year, and that's 0
Sure.
tries in 6 games. He's had try
Yeah.
assists, a couple of try assists, a couple of line breaks, but like he had those games when he was playing inside Brian Toll. He was like they were attacking that edge a bit more. Obviously, I think Toll commands a bit more ball as well. He was pumping out like 160 plus meters a game for about 3 weeks there, and he's been a shocker since he's been next to Casey McLean. So I don't know. I just think there's upside there. Look, it's probably in terms of a fantasy question. Like we're on different sides of this. I'm keen to come back to this in like a month and see how he's played, and either eat humble pie or just slam dunk on you there. But I think for people at home, like if you're listening along to this, you've got Jenkins. When you watch the Panthers play, do you think Jenkins has game, or do you think he's a scrub? Is basically the question. And if you think he's got a bit of game about him, you'd stick with him. If you think he's kind of just not got that much about him, then you probably sell. So that's probably a. Would you agree? It's probably a personal. You're watching the games, you're making your own call. We've made different calls, and we're going to stand on those, and everyone else has to sort of make their call too.
Yes, but I think this one's a bit more clear cut. Like I don't think you're in any danger of him coming out and making you regret selling him.
Oh, okay, all right. I reckon he will. I reckon he will. I reckon he will, mate. Him next to Tor, that he pumped out that like 40 plus back-to-back weeks, no tries in those games. I reckon
Well,
he
I
will.
mean, one of them was on the wing, and the other one was in center in a game where he doesn't throw offloads very often. That was like the one game he's ever thrown more than one.
He started the year this year in reserve grade, killing it too, right? Like he was pumping out like a 60 average in reserve grade. So, all right, look, we can disagree on some of them. It makes it a bit more fun. If you're a Jenkins owner, listen to me. Listen to me if you want to win. Listen to Jay Z if you want to be in the top 100 this year. So they're both good bits of advice. Now, sells, quick fire, easy here. We got Gus Crichton, Connor Watson, Thomas Cant, Dave Fafita, Dylan Egan. These are all a bit of a debate. Gus Crichton's the one that's probably not much of a debate. Misses round 10 next week, misses bulk games through the origin period, is guaranteed a spot in the origin side and scored 33 this week. So he was a sell for me. I sold him when he had that groin issue. I sold him for a pretty decent price. He was averaging sort of high 50s. He's now dropped a little bit, but you're still selling him at a good price. I think that one's an easy one. Connor Watson's a little bit more dicey because he's not 100% guaranteed to make the origin side. Obviously, new origin coach for the Blues and not in great form right now, but was fantastic last year. So would be in my origin side. Just there is that small risk that he doesn't make the origin team, and Connor Watson's the best player in fantasy through origin. That's the only reason you'd hold him. Outside of that, the scoring's been average. If he does make origin, he misses bulk games for that period. So I'm okay with people selling Watson at this stage. I'm not saying you have to go and do it, but if you've got trades you can make where you can get something out of Watson, he's still at a good price. He's going to drop cash over the next few weeks. I'm good with it. Jay-Z, are you thinking the same thing here for Watson, or do you think he's a firm hold, or what's your take here?
I'd lean more towards hold, based on a few things that we sort of spoke on through this video. So we're at an absolute premium when it comes to mids and hookers. And while, yeah, he is very likely to play State of Origin, there's a chance that Laurie Daly says, you know what, I'm going to pick Tyron Wishart instead. He's going to be my utility. Connor
Oh,
Watson isn't going to play Origin. And then you've traded a guy 2 weeks ago that you're now about to trade back in because if Watson doesn't play Origin, everyone's buying Connor Watson. So I think the inverse of yes, if he plays Origin, he misses a lot of games, but if he doesn't make Origin, he is all of a sudden, like you said, basically the best player in fantasy over the
yeah.
bye rounds. So I would lean towards just holding a couple more weeks. It's not as obvious as Angus, where he's definitely playing for the Blues unless he gets injured. Whereas Watson, there's something that says to me that he's not going to make the team. I don't know what it is, but I just feel like Laurie Daly might go with Wishart or Burton as a utility instead.
Yep.
So, yeah,
Well,
I'd
Egan,
just wait and
Dylan
see.
Egan, Coruscant. Like, there's heaps of guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I look at these numbers, right? Because I'm not a Watson owner, and I hated myself for it for a while. But this last 5 weeks, he's cracked 50 once. He's tackle breaks have completely fallen off a cliff. Like it's been 0, 1, or 2 every week. I don't know. The running game is sort of a bit more quiet as well. Like a lot of people are really getting impatient with Connor Watson at this stage.
Yeah, but I think he just needs to sort of suck it up for a couple more weeks. And if he's not there in round 12, he's an easy trade. But he's too good if he doesn't make Origin, I think.
Yep, fair play. Then we'll roll through Thomas Cant up next, 633K. He was one that I was keen for people to hold last week just because of that PPM. He showed that PPM, 38 points in 27 minutes. So he definitely showed that. And if he could somehow have squeaked out a 40-minute roll, play round 12, he may have been interesting, but he's obviously completely out of the team now. So that's an easy one. Jacob Safidi's come back. Adam Elliott's come back as well. They're pretty full up in terms of middle forwards. So Thomas Cant, 633K. He's done his job. Most of you guys bought him at 500K. You got some good scores out of him, and you've made 133K. So that's a pretty straightforward one. Then Dave Fafita, 670K. Jay-Z, you're a Dave Fafita owner. So what are you doing with this guy?
Yeah, I'm selling him. He's just he's not playing very well. He had a really good game against the Dragons, and then sort of tweaked his hammy, and then missed that game, and came back last week, and just didn't look like he cared. Honestly, some of the tries the Cowboys scored, you could see him jogging in the background or making horror missed tackles, and so I don't know. He probably won't play Origin on form, but his buy schedule's not all that friendly anyway, so I'd want to wait and see him actually start in the back row before thinking about buying him again. And until then, I think if he even does come back into the team, he'll be on the bench playing sort of 50 to 60 minutes again. And so he might drop back in price to early 600s and then start, and then we can all get on him. So
yeah,
it's an annoying one for me because I had him traded to Bo Firma, very, very locked in until he made a miraculous recovery.
mate.
And which cost me about 70 points. So
yeah, that's brutal. I mean, 26 points last week. He's ruined his break even as well. So it's not even a case of him, being a massive cash generator. So yeah, I'm with you there. And Dylan Egan's the last one. This one's really straightforward in my head. He had a bit of a quieter game last week, so less minutes than usual. Jumped back down to that 50-minute roll. Also didn't sort of have the output he normally has too. So PPM was quite a bit lower too. So you had this sort of perfect storm of lower PPM, lower minutes, which isn't what we've seen from Dylan Egan so far. I'm not saying he's going to get back to that 80-minute roll, but the potential that he could do that just means that at 521K with a reasonably hittable break even, you just keep a guy like him. You just give him an extra couple of weeks. He's a young guy. Maybe he steps back into that role. If 50 minutes becomes the norm and he's playing a lot of those minutes at edge, which is not as productive as the middle, then, we have a talk about it over the next couple of weeks. But let's give it a bit of time because they're obviously making bulk changes in this forward pack. Like they've named Hamish Stewart to start at lock over Jack DeBellin. Maybe DeBellin goes into the prop rotation. Like we don't know what's going to happen here. So yeah, Dylan Egan's one where you stick with him for this week. You don't have to start him if you don't want to. I'm going to start him in my team, but you don't have to start him if you really don't trust him. But I think he's going to be pretty safe for, a 40 odd this week is my view.
yeah, so I think he only didn't sort of play those minutes because they were kind of chasing points at that point in time. And if you look at the general fantasy scoring for forwards in that game, it was quite low for everyone across the board. Dylan Egan actually managed 33 in 48 minutes as on the edge, which is actually pretty impressive. Like Kobe Couchman, the PPM god, only managed 44 and 50. And then Naf White had a 36 and Watson a 33. So nobody scored well in that game. And yet he still managed, it's not a great score, but it's an acceptable score for someone that we paid 300K for. So
yeah.
I'd at least give it one more week. If he's only playing 50 minutes again this week, I'm expecting it to be a closer game, Tigers and St. George. So if it's a close game, I think he stays on. He's more likely to. He didn't miss any tackles last week against the Roosters, and they got flogged. So it says a bit about what his strengths are as a player.
Yeah, and the back rowers didn't do anything in that game either. So for the Roosters, so yeah, easy play. And that's buy, hold, sell, done and dusted. So for this week, there's some pretty solid cheapies to talk about. I think Savala has to be in everyone's team. To recap, Aaron Clark is an important one as well. You got to strengthen up your wing fullback there. So guys like Drinkwater, Sharp are really easy options too. And Jay-Z, you and I think we need to have a little bit of a wager here. Tommy Jenkins. What if we said something like he's 380K right now? He's sort of declining in cash. What if we said in a month's time, is he over or under 400K? Do you reckon that's a pretty easy line for us to work with?
I think there's a real chance that he grabs a couple tries and goes over that. All it takes is one good score for him to get over 400.
Okay.
What's he playing? Brisbane Cowboys.
You can't go study it now. This is on the fly bet.
Look, he's a stud, but like you've picked 20K as the sort of line.
Though. You're picking the drop.
Let's say 450.
450. Okay. All right. 450 by the first Penrith buy.
Okay, so
like not round 11, obviously, but I think they have a buy in round 15 from memory.
Right. Look, I think there's a very real chance he's not in the team when Brian To'o's back. So
then you'll
easy bet for me.
And you'll win, yeah. I'm backing him. I'm backing him in now. And the fact that we're disagreeing is making me more firm on this too. So anyway, Tommy Jenkins, 450K is the line. Guys, if you're still here, let us know. Do you think Tom Jenkins can, return to form playing next to Brian To'o? Or do you think he's completely out of the team and they run Luke Garner or Casey McLean or one of these guys instead? Thank you, Jay-Z, for jumping on. Always a good time, man. Appreciate you joining. And just one last thing. Where can people find you and your podcast?
Yep. So we're on Spotify and YouTube. It's the NRL Fantasy Echo Chamber. Tune in.
Yep, Echo Chamber. Guys, they're banging actually. Like there's a lot of podcasts that pop up. Echo Chamber know their shit. Like they know what they're talking about. So check them out. They're really good. And thank you for jumping on, Jay-Z. I'll see you on the next one.